Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Millennium TV News. This is Isha Jahan with the top stories. Obama says Trump Cruz doing Democrats a favor in election campaign. Obama to discuss Islamic State at CIA next week. Islamic State's days are numbered. Kerry. US South Korea conduct military drills. Saudi Arabia, Egypt agree to build bridge over Red Sea. Viewers, now the detail. President Barack Obama on Friday told donors that Republican presidential candidates Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are doing Democrats a favor by exposing extreme views within their party on issues such as immigration and national security. I actually think that Donald Trump and Ted Cruz have done us a favor, Obama said, referring to policy positions that would restrict Muslims and Mexicans from entering the country. Obama said Trump and Cruz, the two frontrunners in the Republican nomination contest ahead of the November 8th presidential election, have upset mainstream establishment Republicans with their insurgent campaign. But he told about 100 people at the annual signature fundraising dinner for Nancy Pelosi, Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, that Trump had said bear what some in the Republican Party had been saying for years. US President Barack Obama will convene a meeting of his National Security Council next week at the Central Intelligence Agency headquarters to review the fight against Islamic State militants, the White House said on Friday. The meeting to be held on Wednesday comes as the administration weighs a plan to increase the number of U.S. Special Operation Forces deployed to Syria to try to advance recent gains against Islamic State. The top U.S. General Joseph Dunford, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has said he is working on options to present to Obama to increase U.S. forces in Iraq to bolster Iraqi forces preparing for a major offensive against the militant group in Mosul. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says Islamic State fighters have been losing ground in Iraq for months and will face increasing pressure from the U.S.-led coalition.
Well, good afternoon, everybody.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry visited Iraq on Friday to show support of its prime minister, who is grappling with a political crisis, a collapsing economy and a fight to retake ground from Islamic State militants. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi last week unsettled Iraq's political elite with a proposed cabinet reshuffle that claims to curb entrenched corruption by replacing long-time politicians with technocrats and academics. His aim is to free Iraqi ministries from the grip of political class that has used the system of ethnic and sectarian quotas instituted after the U.S.-led invasion in 2003 to amass wealth and influence.
Daesh's leaders, and we will train local forces to take and hold more ground. Daesh's days are numbered. Here in Iraq, in Syria, and wherever it exists.
U.S. and South Korean military conduct drills near the border with North Korea. Military vehicles stormed the banks of a river near the North Korean border to U.S. and South Korea military conduct river crossing exercises on Friday. About 400 U.S. soldiers and 100 South Korean soldiers worked together to construct a temporary floating bridge over which 4 tanks and 12 Bradley fighting vehicles crossed. The operations were just miles from the demilitarized zone separating the two Koreas, which are still technically at war. U.S. Army Major Ed Armstrong saying the drill is meant to help secure the South Korean-U.S. alliance.
Our mission over here is to deter North Korean aggression, partner with our South Korean allies across multiple formations, and then help sustain our alliance here on the peninsula.
The current tension on the peninsula follows tough new UN sanctions against the North over its nuclear and missile programs and coincides with annual drills by the South Korean and United States military. Friday's exercise was not part of those annual drills.
King Salman unveils historic step to connect Africa and Asia during Cairo visit, and allies seal multiple trade deals. Saudi King Salman has said an agreement had been reached with Egypt to build a bridge over the Red Sea connecting the two countries. The monarch made the announcement in television comments on Friday, the second day of his visit to Cairo after meeting Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and before representatives of the two countries began signing investment deals. I agreed with my brother, His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, to build a bridge connecting the two countries, Salman said. This historic step to connect the two continents, Africa and Asia, is a qualitative transformation that will increase trade between the two continents to unprecedented levels.
The unique quality of the relations between Egypt and Saudi Arabia, the extent to which they're strong and deep-rooted, will allow us to face mutual challenges. Our cooperation will certainly allow us to resolve all of our regional crises, such as in Palestine, Yemen, Libya, and Syria.
Viewers, we'll take a short break. Stay with us. We're back in a moment with the headlines here.
নিশাদ ট্রেডিং একটি আন্তর্জাতিক মানের গার্মেন্টস প্রোডাক্ট আমদানি ও রপ্তানিকারক প্রতিষ্ঠান। ইউরোপ, এশিয়া ও আমেরিকা সহ বিশ্বের নানা স্থানে বাইং, মার্চেন্টাইজিং এবং ম্যানুফ্যাকচারিং করে থাকে। সর্বাধুনিক প্রযুক্তিতে তৈরি বিভিন্ন ডিজাইনের পোশাক বাজারজাতকরণ এবং বিপণন এই প্রতিষ্ঠানের লক্ষ্য। প্রতিষ্ঠানের বৈশিষ্ট্য: উন্নতমান নিশ্চিতকরণ, টেকসই পণ্যের নিশ্চয়তা, নির্ধারিত সময়ে পণ্য সরবরাহ, লেনদেনের স্বচ্ছতা ও বিশ্বস্ততা। যোগাযোগের ঠিকানা: ইউএসএ কর্পোরেট অফিস, 1747 থার্ড স্ট্রিট সুইট 215, জ্যাকসন হাইট, নিউ ইয়র্ক, NY 11372। বাংলাদেশ কর্পোরেট অফিস, বাড়ি নং 145, সপ্তম তলা, রোড নম্বর 12, ব্লক জি, দক্ষিণ বনশ্রী, খিলগাঁও, ঢাকা 1219।
ফ্রেন্ডস ডেভেলপমেন্ট
একটি স্বপ্নের ঠিকানা, একটি সুন্দর আবাসস্থল। ফ্রেন্ডস ডেভেলপমেন্ট আপনার স্বপ্নের বাস্তব রূপ দেয়।
নতুন ডুপ্লেক্স, অ্যাপার্টমেন্ট, কমার্শিয়াল বিল্ডিং নির্মাণের জন্য নির্ভরযোগ্য একটি প্রতিষ্ঠান।
ফ্রেন্ডস ডেভেলপমেন্ট
অত্যাধুনিক ডিজাইন, সর্বশেষ প্রযুক্তির সমন্বয়ে আমাদের কর্মতৎপরতা কনক্রিট, সিমেন্ট আর ইস্পাতের মজবুত বন্ধনে
গড়ে উঠুক আপনার বাড়ি। রোদ বৃষ্টি সহ সকল বৈরিতার বিরুদ্ধে করি সঠিক ট্রিটমেন্ট।
আপনার শহরের প্রাইম লোকেশনে রয়েছে আমাদের অ্যাপার্টমেন্ট।
আপনার কষ্টার্জিত টাকা এবং আমাদের নির্ভেজাল শ্রমে নির্মিত হোক আপনার স্বপ্নের বাড়িটি। আপনার জীবন হোক সুন্দর এবং আনন্দময়।
আমাদের ঠিকানা: ফ্রেন্ডস ডেভেলপমেন্ট, 211 ইস্ট 43 স্ট্রিট, সুইট বি, 507, নিউ ইয়র্ক, NY 10017। ফোন: 718-893020।
ইমেল: friendsdevelopment@optimum.net।
Myanmar, new Suki government releases 69 prisoners. How Saudi's Yemen war made Al-Qaeda stronger. Migrants return to Turkey from Greece. US airstrike kills senior Al-Qaeda leader. Italy recalls Egypt ambassador over student murder. Viewers, let's move to the next news. More detainees expected to be released, including 40 students facing charges since March 2015. A Myanmar court has freed 69 jailed students in the first wave of detainee released after Aung San Suu Kyi pledged that the release of activists and political prisoners would be first priority of her new government. Suu Kyi guided the National League for Democracy Party to a landslide win at the polls in November, and a confident Tin Khaw was sworn in as the country's new president after more than 5 decades of military rule. The routine jailing of dissidents by the former junta state, an international outcry and support for the pro-democracy movement. Suu Kyi spent 15 years under house arrest, and many current NDL MPs served time in prison. Al-Qaeda now openly rules a mini-state in Yemen, with a war chest stolen by $100 million in looted bank deposits and revenue from running the country's third-largest port.
A little over a year into a Saudi-led war in Yemen that's backed by the United States, Al-Qaeda in Yemen has emerged as the greatest beneficiary of the conflict. Based in Yemen's third-largest port, it's collecting an estimated $2 million worth of daily revenues. A Reuters investigation that's spoken to over a dozen Yemeni officials, tribal leaders, residents, and activists has revealed that Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula has set up a quasi-state and a small economic empire in the city of Mukalla, where it derives at least $2 million a day in revenue based on taxing ship traffic and informal smuggling of oil products. For years, the organization in Yemen had been driven to near irrelevance by the rise of Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, as well as persistent security crackdowns against it by Yemeni forces and US drone strikes. In late March of last year, Saudi Arabia and other Gulf Arab countries launched a military intervention to try to dislodge Iran-allied Houthi rebels who had taken over Yemen's capital, Sana'a. The campaign has unleashed one of the world's worst humanitarian crises on the already impoverished country, and so far has failed to provide a safe space for governing for the internationally recognized administration of the president in the southern city of Aden. The Reuters investigation has demonstrated that not only has Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula been able to grab territory amid the security vacuum, but it's been able to turn the situation to its enormous economic benefit. In contrast to the heavy-handed and ultra-violent governing approach of Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, Al-Qaeda appears to have modified its governing strategy so as not to alienate the local population. With few decisive territorial gains having been made in over a year of warfare, there seems to be no end in sight for Yemen's conflict, and therefore no concerted international or regional will or ability to tackle Yemen's growing quasi-state.
Greece ferries migrants to Turkey under a European Union pact as activities attempt to block their departure. A ferry carrying 45 migrants left Lesbos, Greece on Friday en route to Turkey as part of an EU plan to stem mass migration into Europe. Under the deal, Ankara will take back all migrants and refugees, including Syrians, who enter Greece through irregular routes. The EU will take in thousands of Syrian refugees directly from Turkey. For their role, Turkey will get more money, early visa-free travel, and process in its EU membership negotiations. At least 2 activists plunged into the water in an attempt to prevent the vessel from sailing. They were quickly retrieved by a coast guard. Local television reported that those who left on Friday were primarily from Pakistan. A first group of 202 militant migrants, most from Pakistan and Afghanistan, was sent back to Turkey on Monday. Egyptian fighter Rifai Ahmed Taha, a former aide to Osama bin Laden, reported killed in Syria in a drone attack. A senior Egyptian Al-Qaeda member and former aide to Osama bin Laden was reportedly killed in an American airstrike in northwestern Syria, a monitoring group and relatives confirmed. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and said Rafah Ahmed Taha, 60, who was fighting in Syria, died in a U.S. drone strike on Tuesday in Syria's Idlib province. In Egypt, a relative said Taha's wife and brother received confirmation about his death, and dozens of members and armed groups were paying condolences on Friday to the family. The relative spoke on condition of anonymity to the Associated Press news agency. However, in Washington, Department of Defense spokesman Matthew Allen said officials couldn't confirm Taha's death. The move came after 2 days of talk between Egyptian and Italian investigators in Rome ended without progress. Italy recalled its ambassador to Egypt on Friday in protest over what it said was a lack of progress into the investigation of the brutal murder of an Italian student in Cairo 2 months ago. Ambassador Maurizio Massari was summoned to Rome for consultations on an urgent assessment of the most opportune moves to renew efforts to find out the truth on the barbarous murder of Giulio Regeni. Foreign Minister Paolo Gentiloni said the move came after 2 days of talks between visiting Egyptian and Italian investigators in Rome ended without a resolution of mounting tensions between the two countries. We want only one thing, the truth about what happened to Giulio, Gentiloni said in a tweet. At least 22 people died after bus carriers off the interoceanic highway and plunges into a river early in the morning. At least 22 people died in Peru after a bus driver lost control of his vehicle, plunging it into a river outside the city of Cusco. The accident took place around 2:30 am along the interoceanic highway that connects Peru and neighboring Brazil. Most of the passengers were residents of Cusco who were heading back home to vote in Sunday's presidential election, as it is required by law. Bus accidents are common in Peru, where vehicle and highway maintenance is poor and road snakes along precarious mountains. 2 teenage British girls were given life sentences with minimum terms of 15 years for violently attacking a 39-year-old woman. Just a few weeks before Christmas in 2014, 39-year-old Angela Wright's son was found in her house with more than 100 injuries. Now 2 teenage British girls have been given life sentences with minimum terms of 15 years for violently attacking her in northeast England. Her mother had no words to offer as she left the courthouse. A neighbor expressed outrage and pain.
They're going to get out when they're 30, have a nice life. What about poor Angie and her family? Her mum had to witness her daughter's body on a slab through 2 teenage girls. Society's awful. Sorry, I can't do this.
Unidentified neighbors saying they're going to get out and have a nice life. What about Angela and her family? Her mom had to witness a daughter's body on a slab through 2 teenage girls. The society is awful. The unnamed girls were only 13 and 14 at the time of murder. A group of demonstrators with crutches and wheelchairs continue their journey to La Paz, where they will demand an increase to their government's stipend. Some 150 disabled protesters arrive in the Andean town of Caracolo, Bolivia. They are on day 11 of a cross-country protest to capital La Paz. The demonstrators want the government to increase their stipend from $144 a year to $72 per month. The government has already rejected the increase but has expressed its willingness to enter into a dialogue with the group. Visitors and experts say they welcome the people's treatise on marriage and the family that calls for a less strict and more compassionate Catholic Church. Here at the Vatican, change is in the air. News of Pope Francis's treatise on marriage and family is moving fast.
It's very interesting, it's very nuanced. Finally, there is also a fresh air in the description of the family.
Author and Vatican journalist for newspaper Il Fatto Quotidiano Matteo Politi.
It shows also the sign of a compromise. The Pope opens a new window in the language and in the attitude towards remarried and divorced people.
It also shows the sign of a compromise. The Pope opens a new window in the language and in the attitude towards remarried and diverse people. The document released on Friday urges the Church to be more open towards its calls imperfect Catholics, especially those who have divorced and remarried, and those who are therefore ineligible to receive communion unless they receive an annulment.
This is not medieval times. This is, life's moved on. We've got internet, people know what goes on in other parts of the world, so they can't sustain keeping people ignorant, really.
I think it's only right that the Church moves closer to the family as it is today, with the problems of today's families.
Iraqi army closes in on Islamic State in heat backed by the US-led coalition airstrikes. Iraqi forces close in on heat just northwest of Baghdad. They hit into the once-time Islamic State stronghold, a place where the flames of war still rage. With the help of US-led airstrikes, the hope is to push Islamic State closer to the Syrian border. Citizens continue to flee what was once home to almost 100,000 people. Iraqi forces continue to press on, aiming to reclaim Mosul later in the year. Migrants stranded in Indomani in Greece hold Friday prayers as they refuse to leave the camp despite closed borders and scarce resources. A time of prayer at a migrant camp in northern Greece. Here along the border with Macedonia they pray, and for some time reflection comes at a time of regret, like for Syrian migrant Mohammed Zakaria.
I was a day laborer, earning my living each day as it comes, and it was a good life. I swear to you it was a good life. But it was war that forced me to leave my country. We were content with the way we lived. If we knew the borders were closed, we would not have left. We would have stayed in the crossfire and died a quick death.
Many have lived here for more than a month. Many still hoping they can get to Germany. Some say the EU has been vague about their options. Fruit and vegetable sellers offered their wares at the camp. In some ways, a sign of what could be. So they wait in hopes that the borders will open again, with few signs that there is any change on the horizon.
Buddhist monks run a cafe in Tokyo to get the public interested in the religion in a more casual setting. Miho Nanba practices meditative calligraphy while sipping a beverage in the fashionable neighborhood in Tokyo, but it's not a typical cafe. This establishment is run by Buddhist monks. Customers can drink coffee or alcohol and grab a bite to eat, all while chatting with spirituality.
I want to come back, Miho said. It's casual, and I want to talk to the priests.
Buddhism has long been associated with death and funerals in Japan. Recently, more and more Buddhist monks are trying to change that perception.
だいたい20代から40代の女性のお客様が多いですね。その理由は
Most of the customers are 20 to 40-year-old women. Although Buddhism always emphasizes death, this cafe emphasizes the living. I think that creates an atmosphere which makes it easier for people to accept Buddhism, and that's the reason why it's popular with young women.
多くの若い女性の方々がこのカフェに足を運んでくださるんじゃないかなと思います。
North Korea holds an art exhibition in Pyongyang to mark the 104th birth anniversary of the state's founder, Kim Il-sung. The opening ceremony of an industrial art exhibition in Pyongyang. The exhibit is part of the celebration to mark the 104th anniversary of the birth of Kim Il-sung, the country's founder. April 15th is Kim Il-sung's birthday. It is also known as the Day of Sung. Rihu, the Industrial Art Guidance Bureau, says the exhibit is a showcase of progress.
This exhibition attracts many people by displaying the most representative works, which show rapid development of industrial arts under the wise leadership of dear respected leader Kim Jong-un.
This exhibition attracts many people by displaying the most representative works which show rapid development of industrial arts under wise leadership of dear respected leader Kim Jong-un. The exhibition is showcasing about 1,000 products. A range of designs are on display, including architecture as well as everyday items, shoes as well as cap snaps. And of course, an item in focus is just about any country, the woman's handbag. Amateur video shows Belgian police arresting a suspect in connection with November Islamic State attacks in Paris. The suspect has not been identified, although local broadcaster VRT said Mohamed Abrini, more than likely the so-called man in the hat seen in the video camera footage, and had been arrested in Brussels. The Belgian Federal Prosecutor's Office on Friday confirmed it had been made several arrests relatedly to the deadly attacks in Brussels on March 22nd, but gave no further detail. Earlier on Friday, public broadcaster VRT said 2 men were arrested, one of them being Mohamed Abrini, wanted over November Islamic State attacks in Paris. An amateur video showed a man being arrested in the Brussels district of Anderlecht, next to the western districts of Molenbeek, which has been at the heart of Belgium's struggle with Islamist militants. Sources say Syrian rebel forces have taken over a town near the Turkish border that had been the main stronghold of Islamic State in the northwestern Aleppo countryside. Syrian rebel forces are rolling into Islamic State's main stronghold in northern Aleppo. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says the rebels captured the town of Arai on Thursday. Here, a rebel fighter claims it was a Free Syrian Army. Al-Rai sits near the Turkish border and had been heavily defended by the IS, but after days of what it described as intense US bombing and Turkish artillery fire, the IS-linked news agency considered the town's loss. The group's local headquarters in the town was also captured. Video shows its new conquerors celebrating on the streets. It was the first retreat by IS since they made major advances in the area last May. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been formally invited to the outreach meeting of the G7 nations, a grouping of 7 advanced economies, to be held in Japan next month. Japan's Premier Shinzo Abe has extended the invitation to Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to join the event, PM's press secretary Ihsanul Karim told BSS on Friday. He said the meeting would be held in the central Japanese city of Ishishima of Mie Prefecture and expected to be joined by 6 other developing countries: Laos, PDR, Vietnam, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Sri Lanka and Chad. The outreach meeting will be held as part of the G7 summit slated for May 26-27. The G7 groups Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States, while the European Union is also represented within the G7. The agenda for this year's summit will likely focus on maritime security, anti-terror measures and the refugee crisis. Detectives have questioned 5 people, including 3 military policemen from the Kumila cantonment where college girl Shohagi Jahan Tonu lived and was found dead. The 3 men were at the Crime Investigation Department's office from 4 p.m. until midnight on Thursday, said Special Superintendent of Police MD Nazmul Alam. He did not say who were the other 2 interrogated on Friday morning, but indicated one was a female friend of Tonu and the other a friend of her brother. On March 20th, the Victoria College student was found dead within several yards of her home inside the Kumila cantonment, where her father, Yar Muhammad, works as an office assistant. Police suspected that she might have been raped before being murdered, but her first autopsy report, though inconclusive about the cause of death, found no evidence of rape. But a following autopsy was done after the body was exhumed on March 30 following a court order. Its findings are yet not out. Protests are still being held across the country, with most blaming the authorities for failing to arrest anyone so far. The CID has been investigating the sensitive case after it passed on to it by the detective branch, which got it from police. United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Said Rad Al Hussein has urged that Bangladesh government to take urgent concerted measures to ensure the protection of all those being threatened by extremists operating in the country.
Nazim Uddin knew, and Bangladesh's history has shown, that violence will not.
Hussein made the call, saying that they're alarmed by the violent killings of yet another blogger in Bangladesh, Nazimuddin Samad. We call on political and religious leaders to unequivocally condemn such murders and on the authorities to swiftly investigate and bring the perpetrators to justice, he said, quoted as saying in a statement received from the Geneva on Friday. Meanwhile, spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Ravina Samdasani, in a statement renewed their call to the government of Bangladesh as its first step forward to halt all executions and institute a moratorium for the use of death penalty. Bangladesh reportedly, she said, has more than 1,200 prisoners on death row, and in March this year alone, at least 13 people were reportedly sentenced to death in separate murder cases in 4 districts in Bangladesh.
A select number of bloggers who continue to be.
Viewers, now the business news. The U.S. Justice Department on Friday said it would keep fighting to force Apple Incorporation to open an iPhone in a New York drug case, continuing its controversial effort to require Apple and other technology companies to help law enforcement authorities circumvent encryption. Just 2 weeks ago, the government dropped its effort to require Apple to crack an iPhone used by one of the shooters in the December attacks in San Bernardino, California, saying it had unlocked the phone without Apple's help. Some observers thought the government would back away from the New York case too, since the suspect had already pleaded guilty. But in a letter filed in federal court in Brooklyn, New York, the Justice Department said the government continues to require Apple's assistance in accessing the data that it is authorized to search by warrant. An Apple attorney said Friday the company was disappointed but not surprised that the government would continue to fight in New York after giving up in California. A sharp rally in crude oil and energy shares lifted U.S. stocks on Friday, but the indexes registered losses for the week. U.S. crude oil CLC1 settled for more than 6% higher after data showered lower U.S. stockpiles, driving gains of 2% in the S&P Energy Index (SPNY). In the latest comments from Federal Reserve officials, Fed Chair Janet Yellen said late on Thursday the U.S. economy was on a solid course, while the New York Fed President William Dudley said on a Friday caution and gradual approach to raising rates was inappropriate. Investor focus should shift next week from oil and the Fed to quarterly reports, said Peter Kenny, a senior market strategist at Global Markets Advisory Group in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. At a coffee shop in central Brooklyn facing an empty square where a freezing wind blows in the early afternoon, Rocio Morales and Ladies Mufios discussed various ideas for expanding their Brooklyn-based business. I believe that we can do so much more, said Munoz, who recently became vice president of the child care services provider Beyond Care. We want to be in all 5 boroughs of New York City. That's a big challenge, said Morales, who is the president of the business, and adds, we have had many ideas. Her voice is slightly hoarse from a stubborn cold, but today is a bad timing for being sick. Morales and Munoz technically have the day off from work and are spending it with each other with our young child. A couple of strollers are parked directly in front of the 2 women, both in their late 30s, but they are also attending a meeting with Beyond Care's law later this afternoon. Viewers, now the science, technology and environment news. Hitachi unveils its newest humanoid robot that would one day help humans find their way around offices, train stations, and even hospitals. This humanoid robot could one day be giving you directions. Hitachi's latest offering, EMIE-W3, is designed to guide railway passengers to their trains, hospital visitors to the right patient, and even allow office workers to track down just whatever it is that mooring in account seats. Its developer says the EMIE-W3S's lightweight design makes it perfect for the task. Pentagon debuts as a self-guided ship designed to track submarines and other ships around the globe without a human crew.
The Pentagon doing Google one better this week, christening its very own self-driving ship, the Sea Hunter, designed to track enemy submarines all over the globe without a single human on board. At 132 feet, it's the largest unmanned boat ever developed.
So this ship is equipped with all kinds of different sensors. There's an X-band radar, an S-band radar. It's also got cameras on here that can see ships and other vessels as they approach. Now what that means is, with the software that's on this ship, it'll be able to classify different types of vessels. Some are sail-powered, some are motorized, and this ship with its software should be able to discern the difference and navigate appropriately.
It's one answer to a growing reality. Countries such as Iran and China putting too many subs and other ships in the water for the U.S. Navy to keep an eye on the old-fashioned way. But the unarmed sea hunter won't be sailing the ocean blue solo just yet.
Right now we're in a human-operated cabin that's on the ship, and it's only here for the testing phase. So just like Google's self-driving car, there might be a driver who sits in the seat even as the car drives itself. This safety feature is going to be removed when the testing is completed, once they prove that the ship can operate and navigate safely, maneuvering around other vessels at sea. At that point, anybody who comes on this ship, let's say to try and commandeer the vessel, is going to have a very unrewarding experience. There'll be no controls to grab onto, there'll be no joystick to kind of operate the vessel and maneuver it into port. At most, analysts think this ship could be disabled at sea, but not stolen.
The Pentagon says the $20 million ship will be patrolling hotspots like the Pacific and the Persian Gulf within 5 years, without the risks facing its manned cousins in the Navy fleet.
A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket blasted off from Florida on a NASA cargo run onto the International Space Station on Friday, and its reusable main stage booster landed on an ocean platform minutes later in a dramatic spaceflight first.
D-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket with science for today and for deep space exploration tomorrow.
The successful autonomous touchdown on the booster at sea marked another milestone for billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk and his privately owned space exploration technologies in the quest of develop a cheap reusable rocket, expanding its edge in the burgeoning commercial space launch industry. The liftoff at 4:43 p.m. from Cape Canaveral Air Station also marked the resumption of resupply flights by SpaceX for NASA following a launch accident in June 2015 that destroyed an earlier cargo payload in the space station. About 2.5 minutes after Friday's launch, the main part of the 23-story tall two-stage SpaceX rocket separated, turned around, and headed toward a landing platform floating in the Atlantic about 185 miles northeast of Cape Canaveral.
First stage separation, 2 minutes and 34 seconds. Standing by for first stage separation.
Landing legs have deployed. Of course, I still love you. We have a Falcon 9 on board.
U.S. company said to attach experimental expandable space habitat to the International Space Station. If the thought of traveling for months or years in the confinement of a tiny spacecraft is making you give up the idea of interplanetary exploration, then Thursday's arrival at an unusual cargo at the International Space Station could maybe make you change your mind. Designed to unfold once in space, the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module, or BEAM, could provide space missions with larger and more robust living quarters if proven successful. Scientists say massive melting of polar ice has affected the distribution of the planet's weight. Global warming is shifting to the way the Earth wobbles on its polar axis, a new NASA study saying, highlighting what one expert said is the large impact humans have on the planet. According to the study published on Friday in the journal Science Advances, melting ice sheets, especially in Greenland, are changing the distribution and weight of Earth. As a result, both the North Pole and the wobble, which is called polar motion, have changed course. The recent shift from the 20th century direction is very dramatic, said Surendra Adhikari, lead author at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. While scientists say the shift is harmless, it is meaningful. Jonathan Overbeck, professor of geosciences at the University of Arizona, was one not part of this study, said this highlights how real and profoundly large an impact humans are having on the planet.
There's a radar attached to the satellite, and it bounces a radar wave off the surface of the ocean and measures how long it takes to go down and come back. And this gives us a very simple estimate of the distance between the satellite and the ocean.
Viewers, national charity says millions of kids face critical food shortages and waterborne disease as crisis intensifies. At least 6 million people in Ethiopia face critical food shortages as a result of the worst drought in 50 years. The non-governmental organization said the children warned on Friday the number of Ethiopians without enough food is rising as the drought intensifies in the African country, with children particularly vulnerable. The drought-affected area in a vast with a population of about 30 million affected, with more than one-third in need of emergency and food assistance. The region has now suffered 3 failed growing seasons in a row since mid-2014. More than 14,000 pastoralist families have been on move since July, looking for work and clean water supplies.
Severe acute malnutrition is the last stage that children have in malnutrition. So what we've seen, especially initially in these pastoralist areas where the animals died, the children were cut off from milk and so on, they just...
Viewers, now the entertainment news. Motion filed in Lahore High Court because Indian film industry influence is hurting local productions, producers say. A group of Pakistani film producers and distributors has filed a motion in Lahore High Court seeking a ban on Bollywood films being shown in the country. The distributors say Bollywood films are a threat to local productions. In Pakistan, the studios and cinema houses are often owned by the same company that uses the proceeds from ticket sales to fund new films. In recent years, going to the cinema has become more popular across Pakistan. 4 years ago, there were only 12 screens in Lahore. Now there are 32. There is the need for these Bollywood films if you want to save the Pakistan cinema industry. Nadir Minhas, director of PAF Cinema in Lahore, told media.
There is a need for these films if you want to save the Pakistani cinema industry. If these films don't come here, it will go back to being a niche industry.
But a group of film distributors wants to change all of that. It's asked the city's High Court to ban Indian films.
The 17-year-old daughter of late actor Paul Walker has reached a $10.1 million settlement with the state of the man driving the car that crashed and killed them both in 2013, her attorney said on Friday. Walker was a passenger in a 2005 Porsche Carrera GT driven by Roger Rhodes when the car, traveling at speeds of 80 to 93 miles per hour, careened into trees and a utility pole in Santa Clarita, northwest of Los Angeles. Meadow Walker's attorney, Jeff Millam, said in a statement that the settlement would go into a trust for the teen. The settlement, reached in November 2014, went unnoticed for nearly a year and a half because it was filed under Meadow W, according to celebrity news website TMZ, which reported the story. Rockstar Bruce Springsteen cancels a concert in North Carolina to protest against a new transgender bathroom law. Bruce Springsteen has cancelled a concert scheduled for this weekend in North Carolina to protest against a new state law restricting bathroom use by transgender individuals. Springsteen said in an online statement that the North Carolina law was an attempt by people who cannot stand the progress of our country has made in recognizing the human rights of all our citizens to overturn the progress. Tickets for the concert was that to be presented on Sunday in Greensboro, North Carolina, would be refunded according to Springsteen's website. The North Carolina law has drawn criticism from celebrities and business leaders. A similar legislation has been proposed to Tennessee, causing several music stars like Miley Cyrus to come out against it. Johar, a short film debuting at the Tribeca Film Festival next week, shows how friends of the Boston Marathon bomber struggle to understand his role in the attack.
The world got its first glimpse of the men responsible for the Boston Marathon bombing when the FBI released surveillance photos 3 days after the devastating attack. But these were familiar faces to former classmates of Johar Tsarnaev and his brother Tamerlan. Some of those friends collaborating on Johar, a short film debuting at the prestigious Tribeca Film Festival next week, which tells the story of the people who thought they knew the brothers best. Reuters' Scott Malone covered the attack in 2013 and Tsarnaev's trial last year for planting the bombs that ripped through the marathon's finish line, killing 3 people and injuring hundreds more. His brother died during the ensuing manhunt. Johar cuts between his friends' more typical adolescent memories of smoking pot and laughing with Tsarnaev, and their post-attack struggles to understand his role. director and co-writer Henry Hayes.
So you sit in front of the television and you see people saying the same thing over and over again because no one has any new information, and you just want someone to explain to you why this happened, and no one can.
The film will release just ahead of the 3-year anniversary of the bombing, and it's not the only one to tackle the issue this year. Patriots Day, starring Mark Wahlberg and John Goodman, will be released in December.
Viewers, now the sports news. Phil Mickelson lamented his poor course management after compiling his worst ever score at Augusta National, a 7 over 79, to miss the cut after the second round at the Masters on Friday. On a day when metaphorical train wrecks were not exactly a rare commodity, few made more costly mistakes than Mickelson. The 3-times champion ran up a 3 double bogeys at the 7th, 15th and 16th holes to miss the cut by 1 stroke at 7 over 151, just his third early exit in 24 starts here. I just threw away a lot of shots. That is the worst I have managed around myself this course. The 45-year-old American said, I love this tournament so much and I have been playing so well. To come in and make some of those mistakes and the doubles and stuff that made today very disappointing. I know it was tough, but it wasn't as tough as I made it look. It was very playable. The guys that played well got rewarded, and the guys who got dumb stuff like I did shot a big number. Jason Day was buffeted but not broken by the wind as he eked out a respectable 1 over par 73 to remain in contention for a second consecutive measure after his second round at the 80th Masters on Friday. World number 1 Day dropped 3 shots at the back 9 as gustling winds swept across Augusta National and dried out the course, creating havoc for the world's best players. He was delighted to reach the sanctuary of the clubhouse by just after 3 p.m. with a 1 over 145 halfway total and ended the day just 5 strokes behind pace-setting American Jordan Spieth. It almost felt like we are just trying to survive out there and like a US Open to a point, said the Australian, who has 2 near misses at the Masters, a tie for second in 2011 and the third placing 2 years later. It's hardly to commit a lot of the shots out there, and you've got to be very mentally strong. Day, who broke his measured duck by winning the PGA Championship in August, teed off at 9:59 a.m. ET, by which time the wind was already a factor, far from reaching its zenith. Viewers, let's have a look at Millennium TV News Recap. Obama says Trump cruise doing Democrats a favor in election campaign. Obama to discuss Islamic State at CIA next week. Islamic State's days are numbered. Kerry. US South Korea conduct military drills. Saudi Arabia, Egypt agree to build bridge over Red Sea. You are up to date with the top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log into www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you and stay with Millennium TV. Allah Hafiz.